It's kind of rolling now, which is fine.
Yep.
We'll wait 5 seconds, then I'll begin. That's okay.
Yep.
Okay, here goes. Hello, Ivan.
Hello.
And hello to our viewers. And my name is Dom Bautista. I am the executive director of AC Friends of Court. And sometime in 2020, for some reason, I was named with a number of 25 British Columbians to be recipients of the BC Community Achievement Award. And with that also came a little piece that says that I was the Mitchell Laureate for the year, which led to videotaping of sorts that is now posted on the foundation's website. And when I did my acceptance speech, I sort of made a promise that when it was safe enough, that I will go around the province on a road trip to meet my 25 new friends. So hello, friend number one.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, and
Good.
and I thank you for taking the time today to meet with me. It's September 28th. It's about 11 in the morning. My granddaughter, who lives just like 10 minutes away, is asleep. So we're kind of taking this opportunity to just have a little conversation. So I have some questions for you.
Sure.
So first of all, please tell everyone what you were recognized for.
Well, there are a couple of reasons. Primarily because I do a lot of public performances based on the history of clothing, primarily women's, but men's things and children's things as well. And we talk about political changes and economic changes, and we talk about sort of vaguely political things, certainly historical things, but the gradual emancipation of women from restrictive clothing and showing the parallel to social and political emancipation. We talk about women's emancipation being emancipating for men as well. It's better to work with a partner than for someone who depends on you. It's easier for everyone concerned. I also do a lot of fundraising for various charities. I particularly like the medical charities because I'm not in a position to give money, so I give time and experience. And I think everyone should do that.
Well, that's very nice. That's very nice to hear. So I was going to ask, how has life been since you were recognized by the foundation?
Well, things haven't changed a great deal, of course, because COVID's been in the works, and all my public work has pretty much come to a halt. What we've started to do now is more things online, but I'm not a technical person, and I don't have a computer, and I don't have a cell phone, and I don't have any of the modern gadgets. But other people do, and they've been inviting me to work with them to do programs that can go online. The biggest change, I suppose, is not working for live audiences, things online, but also I'm trying to do more gallery exhibitions with some of the museums in town. I do that normally anyway, but now we're in a position to do more of that and more sophisticated kinds of exhibitions.
I have to say that I loved how we first spoke over the phone. It was when you told me that it was a landline, I'm going, oh my goodness, Mr. Ivan Sayers does not have a cell phone. So you're talking about online exhibitions?
Yeah.
How do you make this work?
I sit back and let other people do it. The people
Okay.
come to me and they tell me what to do, and I do what they want, and it works out relatively well. I miss a live audience, though. I like telling stories, and I tell corny jokes to keep people awake, and so on and so forth. So without a live audience, I miss that, and I don't have the same experience myself. I'm a performer, and to perform for a camera is an indifferent experience. It's not satisfying.
I hear you, and yet here we are doing our best to do this piece.
But you are my audience and I am your audience, so
Yes.
there's an exchange there.
And I'm loving every minute of it, Ivan. Let me
Okay.
tell you. So let me ask you this: what gives you hope?
Well, it's difficult to say because there's degrees of hope. There's the hope for today, and there's the hope for the long range. The important hope, I think, is that the world generally is a better place than it once was. The lesson of history is that you are better off now. I think the epidemic, even though it's a terrible, terrible thing, is in fact unifying the world a bit. People are understanding they have to be cooperative or we will all suffer the consequences. And I think it's brought home things like global warming and some of these other issues that people tend to be selective about in terms of how serious they treat them or if it's real or not, and the conspiracy theory people who are in fact conspiring themselves, which is odd to me. But I think the long-term ambition of humanity is to make the place a safe, happy world. And maybe we're working towards that a little bit.
And as far as your hopes for British Columbians, perhaps, what's giving you hope for them?
I think that COVID has to be dealt with. I think the First Nations issues have to be dealt with as promptly as possible. I think treaties have to be honored or rewritten, or somehow that has to be resolved so that we can be one group and move forward, I suppose. Economically, I'm not concerned. I've never been too concerned about money, but everybody needs a job, everybody needs a roof over their head, everybody needs food. And that's the great equalizer. That's what makes us all in common, and that's the most important ambition of us all. So I don't know if that's about hope or not, but that's what I hope for people. Individually, I hope that I stay healthy for as long as possible. I'm 75 last week, and I am planning on dying at 104 in perfect health. So we'll see how that works out. So
Okay.
hope
All right.
springs.
Hope springs, indeed. Not necessarily eternally, but to
No.
104.
Oh,
Yeah.
at least 4 days out of the week you want to be optimistic. The other 3 you're allowed to be a bit gloomy.
So, to our viewers, what do you think others could do to help you with your cause?
Well, as it is, I started to collect clothing, historical clothing, because I thought it was the most personal of artifacts. It tells you something about the society from which that clothing comes. It tells you about the individual. It tells you about the history of technology and commerce and trade. I'm working on an exhibition right now, which we're calling Asia en Vogue, which is about the influence of Asian cultures in Western fashion and examples of Western fashion as produced in Asia. And I have things back to the 18th century, and that's what we're going to be doing at the Museum of Vancouver. There are institutions who are lending things. There are people in the background who are volunteering doing research. There are people who are going to help me write it, because I write it and it's terrible, and then half a dozen people go through it and they make me look smarter than I actually am. But the long-term goal is actually to get a building to have a museum of clothing and textiles. We've concentrated on fashionable clothing right now. There are 3 major collectors. There's myself and 2 other people, but there are other collectors as well. And if we can get them all together, then we can deal with fashion and the history of sportswear, occupational clothing. The ethnic traditions are really complicated and very diverse, and many of the churches and temples and ethnic organizations, social groups, they collect their own costume anyway. but it would be nice to have that all in a central location. And then also the crafting people, the spinners, the weavers, the dyers, the lace makers, the knitters, the painters, all the people that work with textiles to create either personal wear or household garments or yardage or whatever. But it's got to be function as a display space, a library, and a teaching institution.
You bring me back to my younger days.
I'm older than you are, but thank you.
Because for about 10 years, I worked in a textile mill
Whereabouts?
when I was back in the Philippines. And so I know what a loom looks like.
I've got Philippine stuff in here.
Yeah, so when you
Great
speak
stuff.
of the Asian culture, how it intersects with our daily lives, and where it will hopefully lead others to see how they can be sort of citizens of both worlds while they're over here. Sir, you give me hope.
Well, that's nice. Thank you. I have dresses in there from the 20s
Right.
that are made in the Philippines. They're meant to imitate Hungarian folk blouses, but they're probably not the big not the butterfly sleeves.
Not the butterfly sleeves.
That's a different thing. That's from the 1890s, and that I think is probably inspired by the European women wearing big puff sleeves in the 1890s, and then the local women adopt them into their own wardrobes. The Hawaiian muumuu is
Yes.
actually one of that sort of thing. The cross-cultural thing where everybody benefits one way or the other. And that is the way of the future, I hope. And that's one of the great influences of the web. I'm not on the web, but the web is an amazingly unifying influence in the world. And that is an important issue, that people get acquainted with each other. That's when people don't know each other and they're suspicious and they're paranoid, that's what causes competition and envy and wars in the long run. And this exhibition we're working on, it is essentially the most basic is admiring somebody else's aesthetic. But when you want it and you decide to take it, that's when it's a problem. And it becomes coercion and aggression and colonial. And colonialism is based on money, and money is based on the desire for the products of that country. And it gets out of hand. And the only good thing about colonialism in the long run is that it's over.
Yes.
For one thing, it's over. But also, it did cause the cultures of various parts of the world to start to flow and to integrate. Spanish shawls, everybody knows about Spanish shawls and the beautiful Spanish dancers with their shawls. Those shawls that are sold in Spain are sometimes made in Spain, but most of them are actually made in Manila. And the Spaniards actually call them Manila shawls. And here, we call them Chinese shawls because they were made in the Philippines often, but they were also made in China. And usually the ones in the Philippines were designed by Chinese crafters. So, I mean, it's already cross-cultural.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to create that, but we have to recognize it.
Yes.
So it's interesting. It's infinitely interesting to me. And my job is to tell other people why I think it's interesting, so hopefully they will find it interesting too.
Well, if there's anything to be said, our province is blessed with many Filipinos, probably the third largest visible minority, and the Chinese are around. So the where they meet each other on a daily basis gives proof to what you just said.
Well, and people have to understand, even if they don't like multiculturalism, it is here and it is the way of the future.
Indeed.
There is no stopping it. It's snowballing, and it should. It's about time that people learn to get along. And, you know, it's like one big unhappy family.
Well, maybe so. But let me ask you my last question.
Sure.
With an eye to tomorrow, Ivan, who inspires you?
Oh, Well, the there's no one specific person. I think many people inspire me, particularly, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but people who have physical handicaps because they have extra challenges. I've had an advantage in that I was tall, and that's a pretty mediocre advantage, but I had other advantages that came to me just by accident of birth. But I also had polio when I was 8 years old, and I came very close to being permanently damaged, and I wasn't. I was extremely lucky. And there were children in my room at school who were not that lucky. Some of them died, some of them were permanently damaged. I have a friend who is completely blind, and I admire him tremendously. I have other friends who have overcome tremendous difficulties. And, you know, whenever you're feeling grumpy or hard done by because you couldn't afford to buy a new something or other, keep it real. Come on. The fact that you can see and walk and hear, these are all remarkable assets in your life. You're, you know, don't talk about how many troubles you have. Talk about how many fabulous things you have in your life. So many people inspire me. People who are ill and fighting it. People who are ill and dying and take it with good grace. That's admirable too. I hope I have that kind of poise and whatever when the time comes for me.
Well, 104 is still
104.
You have a long time to practice.
Yeah, I it's going to take a long time. Every day you try and correct a little flaw and do a little bit better. Be nice to someone who's been horrible to you and that kind of stuff.
Well,
It's good for you.
I wanted to thank you, and I'm sure our audiences enjoyed listening to you. I'm going to give you one more time to plug this exhibit because I'm going. Tell them when, where.
The exhibition won't open for some time. It'll open in January of 2023 at the Museum of Vancouver, which is on Kitts Point. It's the same building as the planetarium. It will be called Asia en Vogue, Asia in Fashion, Fashion in Asia. It will be in probably for about 6 months. We have garments from about 1730 through to the present day. We're going to try to include at least some suggestions of the massive textile industry, export industry coming out of China and India. But we have many, many other countries and traditions that we're examining.
Well, this is me saying to you, you've got my card. I hope you keep it. I hope you remember to invite me. I gotta be there, Ivan. I gotta be there.
You're on the list.
Please, January 2023.
That's correct.
So, folks, there you have it. From the lovely rustic porch on a very nice fall morning. Had the pleasure of having a chat with my first of 25 new friends around the province, Ivan Sayers, ladies and gentlemen, one of the recipients of the 2020 BC Community Achievement Foundation Awards. Bye, everyone. Okay.
Done.
I left a few seconds there
Yeah,
for
no,
the
no.
people to cut it. Well done, sir.
Same to you.
One take. That's it.
You're a
We
pro.
don't care.
Exactly.
No, I'm not a pro. You're the pro. I just asked the
Well,
questions.
sometimes-
Made you sweat.
Some of the people who have interviewed me over the past 40, 50 years,
Uh-huh.
they have a problem because I talk too much.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times, you know, you have a hard time
Yeah.
getting something out of somebody,
Uh-huh.
but you press the button and I'll just talk and talk and talk.
But you have to be heard, sir.
You do have to be heard.
Well, I won't keep you. You have things to do today, and I thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I
I'm just
think
gonna.
it's an interesting project, so good luck to you with it.
Let's see if I make it to Fort St. John. But that's not till
Let's
the
see if-
summer,
What's in Fort St. John?
Well-
Oh, the one of the recipients.
right? But I told Catherine summer next year, and I think I'm gonna fly to Calgary or somewhere there close
Have you
by.
been all over the province before?
No, I've been to some, so this is a good opportunity
Yeah,
to do so, right?
absolutely. It's
So-
gorgeous.
so,
Everywhere you go,
but
it's beautiful for
I
different
plan
reasons.
I plan to drive most of the